Okay, we're gonna talk about the top half of the engine right here. We've already removed that. That's the actual hose that came off on the top where there was a hole, which is right here, supposed to be attached on the rear section of the intake manifold. The other half of the manifold is right here. Okay, that's what it looks like. This is your fuel system, and then you can see the fuel system, the hose I had to cut because it's stuck in there, and they used the wrong clamp too. Those clamps are only meant for vacuum lines, not high pressure lines, because high pressure lines requires a better clamp than what they use there. That's the gasket. I'm gonna have to replace that too. This is your intake, and as you can see, if I look at the intake inside, there are some oils visible on the back side. I don't know if you can see that, but right there on some of them there are oil in it, trying to come up to the intake area. Anyway, and then as far as this one right here too is the same way. If you look at this thing, this is natural to have oil in between here, but they're not supposed to go into that chamber or this chamber going into the combustion area, like this. Now that one sits on top of this side right here. As you can see, this is the one I'm trying to explain. This is clean, that is clean, but that has oil in it, right there, and this one have oil in it. And as you can clearly see the inside, that's where the piston goes. You can see there where the valve area is inside, and that's supposed to be dry of oil. It shouldn't have any oil in there. The only thing that I can explain this thing is they did not torque this correctly, so they reversed the torque. So the gasket did not seal up in the number 2 and 3 cylinder. Same thing on the other side. This one right here looks like it's wet of oil. So when you're boosting, all the boost is coming from the top of the from the turbocharger, going here to the top, going into there, therefore creating a vacuum in between this galley and sucking the oil that's accumulating here, going in there and going in here through the broken gasket, which is visible on the gasket too, which is right here. And those two areas, as you can see, this is dry and these areas are dry, but in the middle area is dry, so it's coming through there. Those are the gaskets. So this hose right here is already worn out. As you can see, it's old and corroded, and it's attached to the piping on top of this area right here. The problem is we cannot reuse that, and I really don't need to remove all this area right here to just work on the lifter area, which is the lifter areas are right there. Those are where the lifters are. But now, because this is I don't suggest using that, and this is crap anyway, the sleeve that they used in here, but that one attaches to somewhere where it's really not accessible to stick it in. All these hoses right here needs to be replaced. Otherwise, you don't want to be driving and then overheat just because those hoses pop. But it will require to remove all this thing to the turbocharger, the brackets, everything, just to get to that hose right there, unfortunately. So that's what we need to do too. Other than that, the fuel lines, the heater hoses, they're already swollen and fat. There's a reason they're bulging like that, because they're so fat. It's gonna break on you. And those are the heater hoses, so we'll replace 2 of those hoses right here. And that's your stuff that I'm gonna have to redo to make it look prettier. Now's the time to replace all this cap and rotor. They can see sign of wear, which is, you can see the corrosion inside those things like that. So those prongs, you might as well replace the cap. and you might need a new spark plug wires now. I don't know how long ago you replaced this thing, but I will suggest that. Other than that, you know, the only way to fix this area right here is to retorque it correctly, replace all the gaskets, all new bolts, ARP to hold it down correctly, clean everything up, which of course I'm gonna do that. The problem is, because you know, they did scuff this, you can see all that shiny part right here. They shouldn't have used something that's gonna scar it, you know, because that can create, if it's not straight, it can create the surface uneven. You know, you're supposed to use something like this when you're working on that. Let me show you. This is the kind of material you want to use. It's plastic and it will never scar that to clean those gaskets. Therefore, it'll retain the straightness of the surface area. Because if that's the case, if I torque it down and in the future when we open it up we're still seeing that thing, this thing needs to be removed, both sides. Take it to the machine shop, change the gasket, and resurface the surface to make it flat, and redo everything again. And you do have ARP head studs, which is right here. Those are ARP head studs. So this thing is built. Now that I'm seeing it, it's really built. You know, what else I can tell you? The head gasket looks like it's copper too, which is right here. It's metal. You can see it right there. That's the seal that seals you know, the bottom of the engine, this engine to this engine right here. That's what seals it, you know, on both sides, because this is the cylinder head. The whole thing here is the cylinder head, and the half of it is the bottom end, and it looks like it's pretty much built. That's the lifters that we're hearing the noise because they pressurize oil in there, and if they're lacking on oil on the inside, they're not holding pressure, it will create a noise and knocking sound until it builds pressure, you know. But the only thing is the fuel lines, like what I said. Now it's the time to upgrade it. I mean, look at this thing right here compared to the one that I'm gonna show you for fuel lines and stuff. But that's about it. If you have any question, just let me know, man. This is I'm just gonna email you everything and what I think, how much it's gonna cost and everything, and we'll go from there.